Brick by brick by brick is a new world order emerging. The 17th BRICS Summit is scheduled to kick off on Sunday in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. China has announced that Chinese Premier Li Qiang is attending the summit, and China supports Brazil, the rotating BRICS chair, to make the summit a full success. This is the first summit after Indonesia joined as the 11th member in January, and Vietnam joined the cooperation mechanism as the 10th partner nation in June. So how committed is China to the mechanism? How significant is this year's summit, and what does the group's growing attraction mean for the long underrepresented global south and the world at large? Welcome to this edition of The Point, an opinion show coming to you from Beijing. I'm Li Xin. I'm pleased to be joined from Beijing by Thomas Law, president of the Brazil-China Sociocultural Institute, from the Indonesian capital Jakarta, Muhammad Habib Abiyan Dzakwan, researcher at the Department of International Relations at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, Indonesia. From Shanghai, Niu Haibing, director of the Institute for Foreign Policy Studies at Shanghai Institute for International Studies, and from Moscow, Anton Fediashin, associate professor in the history department at American University. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. First of all, let's get the facts out there and correct. BRICS is currently composed of 11 member countries and 10 partner countries. The acronym BRIC was coined in 2001, and the first summit of Brazil, China, India and Russia was held in 2009, and South Africa was admitted in 2011. Now, 6 new members were added in 2024 and 2025. They include Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates and Indonesia. In October 2024, 9 partner countries were announced. They are Belarus, Bolivia, Cuba, Kazakhstan, Malaysia, Nigeria, Thailand, Uganda, and Uzbekistan. And Vietnam became the 10th partner country last month. So now we have a very clear picture of the growth of this organization, of this platform or mechanism, as China is calling it. Let me go to our friend in Indonesia, Habib. First of all, welcome as the very first time on our show. As I said, Indonesia is attending the BRICS Summit this time for the first time after becoming a full member in January. How significant is this moment for Indonesia? What are the sentiments in your country?
This is a very significant moment for Indonesia as a new BRICS member. I think the Indonesian government has aspired to join BRICS ever since last year when the new president inauguration even sent our foreign minister to attend BRICS Summit in Kazan, Russia. So it is Indonesia's government intention to actually, to speed up things. So we will have an additional platform to voice out concerns about the upcoming, global tariff that will be imposed by President Trump, and also about the regional stability in the Middle East. So among other issues, BRICS provides an additional platforms as well as additional supplementary financing instrument like through the new development bank.
You talk about financing, and I want to turn to our guest, Thomas Law, who is head of the Brazil-China Sociocultural Institute. In April, earlier this year, President Xi Jinping visited the new development bank in Shanghai and met with president of the bank, Dilma Rousseff, who is former Brazilian president. And President Xi called the bank a pioneering initiative for the unity and self-improvement of global South, and said that the bank conforms with the historical trend of reforming and improving global governance. What is your observation of his comments there? Were you able to witness the moment in any shape or form? What are your takeaways now that the 17th BRICS Summit is taking place?
In Brazil, we are looking forward to 2 big events this year. One is the BRICS event, and also the COP30 event that will deal with clean energy and climate changes. So in my perspective, we think that the NDB, the New Development Bank, has an important role to play through the BRICS countries. Therefore, if we have in the BRICS countries more results regarding financial instruments that could help developing countries to develop itself in infrastructure, digital platforms, and also clean energy, I think that will be a great success having these summits all through this many years of BRICS summits. So, in my opinion, Brazil is now the chair, is leading these meetings and have a great importance in Brazil because we are now dealing with political issues. We are dealing with the new developing industries in Brazil that are the new industries that are green economies.
What are the sentiments in Rio de Janeiro at this moment, Mr. Law? Although you're in Beijing, I'm sure you follow domestic development closely. The fact that the Chinese president is not going to be there to attend this year's meeting in person, what are people saying about this? What are their expectations about what China can bring, through its Premier Li Qiang to the summit?
Xin, of course. Premier Li Qiang is in Brazil now. Brazil and China, they are great partners, trading partners. In 2023, President Lula came to China in his third mandate. So last year also, President Xi came to Brazil in the G20. And this year, Lula also came back to China in the following meetings. So in my opinion, Brazil and China in this partnership, not only commercial, but now next year we will have the cultural year of Brazil and China. So this cooperation between both countries, the bilateral trade is very strong, but now I think Brazil is willing to have more cooperation in other areas, such as academic areas, cultural areas. And in my opinion, this will be even further cooperation in many other sectors also in the Brazilian economy.
Let me go to Mr. Niu Habib in Shanghai. This is the first BRICS summit that President Xi isn't attending, either personally or virtually. Some people on the international mainstream media are framing this as China kind of losing interest in the mechanism or not attaching as much importance to this mechanism, that China is no longer committed to BRICS. Is this the case? How strongly is China committed to the BRICS?
I think it's not unquestionable that China, as a founding member of the club, has a very strong and deep commitment to the role of BRICS in today's world. I think China has strongly supported the enlargement of the BRICS to play as a major platform for the global South to advance the sustainable development agenda and also the international peace. I think President Xi's personal commitment to the club is also very impressive, not only regarding his consistent presence of the summits, previous summits, but also his vision about the BRICS. And so I think according to the China's point of view, China strongly supports the BRICS play a multiple dimensional role in the global governance, not only on the development financial sector, but also on the international security and the exchange and dialogue of the civilizations. So China supports BRICS to play a role to minimize the knowledge gap among the developing countries, and to unlock the potential of these countries as a whole, as a larger market, and to play a role in today's development and peace. So I think China will continue to do that.
China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs spokesperson Mao Ning, in a regular briefing ahead of the summit, said this about China's commitment, and it says the BRICS cooperation mechanism offers the most important platform for the solidarity and cooperation among emerging markets and developing countries in the world. It is an important force for realizing an equal and orderly multipolar world and a universally beneficial and inclusive economic globalization. Anton, in Moscow, how do you read this message? How clear is China's commitment to the mechanism to you? Mind you, and our readers, that China is not saying one of the most important platforms, it is the most important platform for the solidarity and cooperation among emerging markets and developing countries.
Sin, I think this demonstrates that the Chinese are highly committed to the BRICS, and what they mean by naming this as the single most important platform for emerging economies is that it's the only viable alternative to the Western-dominated financial and trade system. As an historian, I look at the BRICS from a long perspective, and BRICS is a manifestation of our whole planet going through a transition stage, a tectonic shift from the Columbian era, when Western countries, first Europe, then the Western New World, the United States, when they dominated the economic flows across the planet. This is not to say that important things didn't happen elsewhere. They certainly did, but it was Europe and the West, the greater West, that set the melody and the tempo to how the world's economy works. And now this period, which lasted for roughly 400 years, is coming to an end. We are still living within a financial and trade system that was constructed and dominated by the West. The rules were set by Western states, and now the BRICS are the only viable alternative because they contain such powerful economies and such a large percentage of the world's population compared to the G7 states, by the way. This is emerging as an alternative to the Western-dominated system. And one of the ironies for me is that the greatest champions of BRICS, of multilateralism, of multipolarity, are Donald Trump and the likes of Lindsey Graham, senator in the United States, because the more they weaponize or threaten to weaponize the financial and the trade systems that the West so carefully and intelligently constructed, the more they are encouraging countries such as the members of BRICS and their associates and the rest of the world to start looking for alternatives to Western-dominated markets.
Extremely important points, Anton, you have alluded to. Let me go to our guest in Indonesia and get more follow-up on this very important question, which is to zoom out and look at the world from a larger picture. Habib, in Indonesia, are people seeing the development of history in this light, the sense of history that the world is really looking at, the struggle between two different kinds of options? One is the maintenance of the order, where the rules have been made by largely Western powers, whereas now this group of emerging countries trying to say, hey, we want to have a say too, and we want to unite and be a force to reckon with. What is the understanding in Indonesia? Are they seeing this trend as well, and they want to join that, emerging voice?
Sin, thank you so much for the question. I think Indonesia's motivation in joining BRICS is not to replace completely the current order, because to some extent we also gain benefit from the existing order. What we want, what Indonesia wants, usually to actually do reform those representations issues, or like decision-making process that sometimes is too sluggish, and then that costs a lot of developing progress for developing countries. So these elements, Indonesia wants to reform it, but not to replace it. So as I mentioned earlier, I think Indonesia joins BRICS is not to replace, it is to reform the current existing order. So some of them definitely are worth defending and also preserving. But some others elements, such as representation and also the speed of decision-making process, need to be reformed. So yeah.
Thomas, what is the view of Brazilians, right? The scholars, the mainstream opinion leaders, in terms of where they find themselves, trying to join, trying to be part of the old world order, or trying to help invent the new order that doesn't necessarily replace the old one, but builds on the existing one? What is your view?
In my opinion, Brazil has its own diplomatic relations with all countries. And of course, with China, it's a great partner, the greater trading partner for more than 14 years consecutives. Last year, we had the 50th anniversary diplomatic relations between Brazil and China. So in my opinion, BRICS is a special platform for big discussions such as global governance and multilateralism. So if these countries, all of them, be a new voice, they can represent this global South, and Brazil will be part of it. And in my opinion, Brazil is now leading also this integration of Latin American countries. So, of course, China did a big investment in the port of Shanghai in Peru. And this is important because Brazil, of course, has a big coast, has the port of Santos, that is the biggest port of Brazil. But indeed, many politics, governors of other states are willing to make this new infrastructure through Brazil to Peru. So this is a quite special objective, special importance regarding Latin America studies and Latin America countries.
What is China's intention here, Mr. Niu? Because China has been saying, as I said in the Foreign Ministry spokesperson statement, that the BRICS is an important force for realizing an equal and orderly multipolar world and a universally beneficial and inclusive economic globalization. Does China truly mean that? Or is it, as some people say, it's a cover for a longer-term ambition for geopolitical influence, dominance, replacing the existing powers? What's truly on the mind of China and Chinese leadership?
I think that's the new vision of China towards the global affairs regarding the emerging world order and the more difficulties and facing the economic globalization. So facing this new world full of uncertainties, I think the emerging powers, including the BRICS countries and China, they have to give their own think and solutions to this challenging agenda before them. So I think in this for the current BRICS summit, the importance of it is that it is gathering the major emerging powers from the global south. So they have to be more pragmatic and innovative to produce some concrete and workable policy suggestions to reduce the barriers for the international trade and access to the critical technology and minerals in the market. So they have to revive the World Trade Agreement and to focus on the sustainable development agenda, like the climate change. So a lot of things are facing this emerging group. So I think China is strongly and I think China is very expected to talk with BRICS colleagues on these major issues. Whereas I think also vice versa, the rest of the BRICS club is also expecting China to make its commitment to this global agenda clearly and to deliver more public goods to that.
Can I put it this way, that the key word for China and these emerging countries is development, whereas they are said to be after geopolitics. Is that the difference between the two narratives? Or the two, the reality and what's claimed to be on the mind of these people, Mr. Niu? What China has in mind is development. What others accuse China and other countries of is geopolitical ambitions.
I think these two issues are cannot separated because if you want to achieve development, especially sustainable development, you have to have a peaceful regional and national environment. So I think this BRICS countries has to deal with political security and economic challenges together. So there is no simple solution to just focus one dimension, and the other dimension will not work, will disappear. That's not true.
How interesting, because you break it down saying instead of black and white, it's various shades of gray. And actually, there are expectations on this grouping from a geopolitical point of view. For instance, right after the US strike on Iran, BRICS actually issued a joint statement on the escalation of the security situation in the Middle East. And the statement says, we, the BRICS, express grave concern over the military strikes against the Islamic Republic of Iran since 13th of June 2025, which constitute a violation of international law and the Charter of the United Nations, and the subsequent escalation of the security situation in the Middle East. Anton, in Moscow, how do you read the necessity that the BRIC countries see in issuing such a statement? What are they trying to project? Instead of the economic collaboration, economic globalization they're focused on, are they also sending out more weight, projecting more weight in a geopolitical sense as well?
They are, Sin, because they understand perfectly well that current geopolitics and geoeconomics are as important in the narrative sense as they are in the strictly financial and economic one. The BRICS is a forum. Let me just remind all of our viewers, it is not an organization with a headquarters. It does not have a permanent bureaucracy yet. Maybe it will in the future. But it is a forum. It is a discussion space. It has, for the most part, stayed away from acute geopolitical issues and strong statements about it. But it also needs to position itself as a place of dialogue where all issues of the world can be discussed, not just development, but also geopolitics. Because as my colleague in Shanghai just correctly noted, they are inseparable. They're very closely connected. They were, especially during the Cold War, by the way, when development theory was worked out in the United States, specifically in the 1960s, as a way to challenge and oppose Soviet development theory, which was conquering the third world in the 1950s and 60s. So the BRICS are making statements in order to make the global South understand that they have potential partners. They have a platform where they can bring their geoeconomic and geopolitical issues, and the BRICS will do their absolute best to give them a voice in order to magnify it, to amplify it, and in order to make it more accessible to the global population and to simply be heard.
Anton, do you foresee that, right now there's not so much talk about BRICS on the mainstream international media? This term has, since its inception, pretty much be underrepresented, underreported, if I can say. But do you see BRICS continue to emerge? And do you see a point where people are like, this is dangerous, there's, a potential threat posed by the grouping of these countries in the near future?
Sin, absolutely. And I think you point to a very interesting phenomenon in the West, especially in the United States, which is this combination of denial, of the refusal to cover BRICS summits on major media platforms. But at the same time, when you listen to statements that, for example, the American president, Donald Trump, makes about countries switching to trade in their own currencies and bypassing the dollar, he has publicly and openly threatened them with retaliation by the United States. Lindsey Graham, again, the senator from South Carolina, is talking about implementing sanctions on countries that buy Russian energy. Right now, which essentially means the United States declaring war on China, India, and by the way, if they actually stick to what they're threatening, that would include Europe, although they will probably get some kind of carve out. So look, there in the West, there is this combination of denial about the seriousness of BRICS and at the same time threats coming out. If BRICS actually begins to fulfill what it was created to do, which is to simply give countries alternatives to a Western-dominated financial and trade system. And that's the way the West is rolling. Unfortunately, the more it ignores and threatens, the less constructive cooperation there can be between the major Western economies and the BRICS members.
Thomas, finally, let me go to you before I wrap up. What tangible changes can you point to? Because you you brought a delegation to the New Development Bank and met with its president, Dilma Rousseff. What tangible benefits, what tangible changes this mechanism has been bringing to people in Brazil or Latin America, which points to a future where this trend is going to continue and intensify?
In my opinion, the NDB already, they are doing a great job through also helping the Brazilian banks to leverage some of the opportunities in Brazil. You have the example of the Bank of Minas Gerais. It's to leverage entrepreneurs. And the Bank of NDB also is helping them. So they're also helping, for example, the disasters, natural disasters that happened in the south of Brazil. And this is one of the main objectives of the bank, is to help developing countries and emerging economies.
Finally, in one word, Liu Habib, despite the difficulties, the ups and downs, the turbulences we're seeing in the Middle East, is China going to stay committed to BRICS? Yes or no?
I think yes.
With hesitation or without hesitation?
Without hesitation,
Without
yes.
hesitation. Okay, we don't have the time to elaborate, but I think that is very obvious. We are going to leave it there. Thank you so much to my guests, Thomas Law, President of the Brazil-China Sociocultural Institute, Mohammad Habib Abiyan Dzakwan, researcher at the Department of International Relations at the Center for Strategic and International Studies in Indonesia, Liu Habib, Director of the Institute for Foreign Policy Studies at Shanghai Institute for International Studies, and Anton Fediashin, Associate Professor in the History Department of American University. Thank you so much for joining us. And with that, we come to the end of this edition of The Point with me, Liu Xin. As always, you can follow me on Facebook and X using the handle Liu Xin in Beijing. On behalf of the whole team, thank you for joining us. You've got The Point.